Hey, thank you so much for joining us for this episode of This Is How We ROL. We're super excited to sit down with Danette Christiansen and just hear her story of what they did with the seed that they were going to sow, but also a lot deeper than that, some of the other things that God's been doing in their lives. And so thank you for joining us. Hey, and welcome to This Is How We ROL podcast. We're so grateful that you joined us once again. If you've been with us over the last few weeks, you know that we've been just talking about the idea of sowing a seed and generosity. And so we've just been sharing some of the stories of what has happened here at River of Life with different people from our church family. And so once again today, we are joined by a special guest from our church. And that's Danette Christiansen, and she's here to share not only that story, but some of the other amazing things that God is doing in their life. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
And I've also asked Pastor Seth to join us as well. He's tried getting out of being on the podcast and unsuccessfully, apparently.
I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to be told to be here.
So, Danette, let's start by talking. By now, most people will have known what started this whole thing, and that was the board had come to a place where we had some money sitting in an account that we were just waiting to use for a building at some point, and then we really felt like God was saying we needed to release that. We gave some of that away to some of the entities that we're partnering with, but then we gave some of it to just the church. We gave cash at the end of one of the gatherings and said, take whatever you get in your envelope and go sow a seed and do something with it. And then we just asked everybody to kind of send in what they had done with it. So that's kind of where this has been. We've been landing with some of this, is just hearing some of those stories. So why don't you share a little bit about what you guys did with your money when you got it?
So we actually still have our money.
Okay.
God laid on Al's heart a number of years ago the need for male mentors for kids growing up. And it's been on his heart, and God has been working on him for a very long time. And when you gave your flock the opportunity to take some money, he was like, okay, this is time. And so like he's had a conversation with Angela about like scholarships and stuff. So it's still in the works. Mm-hmm. But for me as his wife, it's just been really exciting. Al has so much potential to give, and God, I think, is just revealing and showing him, what he has and that he can do it. So that we were going to use that money that you combine both of ours for the startup fees and that kind of stuff.
So even though it hasn't technically been spent yet, it has kind of been spent because
it's been dedicated to.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So with that, I know part of your story is you were kind of sharing about, even for you guys as a couple, your path as far as understanding like tithing and generosity and all of that kind of stuff. What does that look like for you guys? Because you've been believers for...
Yeah, I accepted Christ when I was in junior high. I'm not sure how old Al was, but when we came together, we were not walking with the Lord in the path that he had for us. We were two broken people that came together, and we had extremely messy pasts. We had exes that we were in and out of court with, fighting custody battles. It just goes on. And we didn't make a lot of money. And now all of a sudden we've got all these kids that we brought together into a family, and we didn't have a lot. We had our electricity turned off and people threatening to repossess our car, and it was a mess. So I in my mind, there was no way I could tithe. I needed every penny I could for food, and we didn't live frivolously. We weren't into the partying scene. We didn't go out, to bars, and we didn't go to movies, and so we truly did not have a lot of money. And when I started going I had been going to church, and the Lord brought us here, and multiple times I just heard you talking from the stage about tithing and what that looked like, and that seed just started growing, and I'm like, if I truly believe, that's something that I need to do. And it started out small, 2 to 3%, what I could, and it fluctuated. There were weeks that I didn't give, based on what I felt we could afford. And I think the Holy Spirit just kept putting that pressure. And I was like, okay, I need to get serious about this. And we just gradually increased. We've been together for 24 years, so this wasn't something that happened overnight. But in 2024, we gave more than 10%. And that was our gross income. And it was so exciting. And then, I look forward to coming to church because you talk about all the ministries. And I'm like, I'm helping with that. And just hearing the testimonies of these people that are taking advantage of the clothing closet and the food bank and helping with Adult Teen Challenge and the Toys for Joy and just all of it, the Thanksgiving baskets. And so just knowing that I was a part of that, I'm not physically going and doing all these things, although I do volunteer a lot. It was just so warming to my heart.
Talk about a little bit, because when I hear you say that, I know a lot of people when they are they find themselves in that same position where they're like, the Bible's telling me to give. I don't know if I can give financially. And then there's this kind of like a metamorphosis that takes place in your heart, where it's like you go from this reluctant giver to this cheerful giver. Talk about how that change that took place over many years, but like from that place of where your heart was when you started giving to now where you are giving over 10%.
I think it was my growth in my walk with the Lord, learning more and understanding who He was and wanting to give back to them. It was a desire. And I was kind of torn. I want to give, Lord, I really do, but come on, God, my finances, you see my checkbook. And so it was just a continual conversation and a laying on my heart. And I'm like, I want to do this. And it was a stretching outside of the comfort box. I'm a control freak, and I like to have everything neat and in order. And so if I give an extra $50, what is that going to look like? That's really uncomfortable. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to try that. And then again, and then I got to the point where like, yeah, I want to do it. Let's see what happens if I do this now, give another $50 or whatever the amount was. And it's just an excitement and a warmth in my heart. Jason has talked many times, test God and see what He can do. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to do it. Yeah.
Isn't it funny how it hits different too? Like you were saying, when you're actually giving and same with when you decide to volunteer, but it's one thing when we get up here and say, oh man, God did this through our food bank or through our whatever. But if you're not actually, whether you're participating in your time, but also in your finances, because then it is, look at what we're doing, look at what God's doing through us. Mm-hmm. And so I love that you said that, because I think that's so important, because a lot of people, they come and they sit and they don't ever actually know what that feels like to like, I'm part of that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They're part of it because they're sitting in the room, but they're not part of it because they're actually participating. Yeah, so I thought that was good.
And it hasn't been just a bed of roses since then. Recently I've walked through a very tumultuous time in my life, which part of that included losing a 10-year job, and I was making extremely good money. And we were at a point in our life, I was tithing well, not out of obligation, but I want to give this much this time. And, we were paying more than what our bills were owed just to the goal is to be debt free.
Yeah.
And so looking at that, we're moving into the retirement stage and just excited. And then I lose my job. I'm like, wait a minute, God, we were doing so good.
Yeah.
But God, even in that, has been so faithful. It's amazing what he does. Again, my wanting to be in control, and I think it was just another tool that God used to don't rely on your job, rely on me.
God has this really crazy thing that he does where it's like multiplication by subtraction, and we see it a lot, where it's like, I can multiply this into a lot of stuff,
Yeah.
but you have to give you have to give something.
Yeah.
And a lot of times that, that initial subtraction that we feel, the boy that gives us lunch, or, the person that gives their tithe, or even, a job being subtracted out of our life, we find that initial subtraction. And we go, oh, God, what are you doing? What's happening in my life? But if you're faithful to remain in that and to hang on with God, he's like, just let me show you what I can do with a simple subtraction. I can multiply it into something that's great.
Yeah. And the job that he removed from my life, I thought for sure I was going to retire from there. That was my plan. And God had a different plan. And where he has me now, I work for a man who's just a God-loving Christian. It's amazing to work for a Christian company. It really is. Yeah.
Awesome. And then didn't you say, you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong, but then wasn't it that then Al, his job, he got a raise or something that ended
That's
up?
part of how God, I took a huge, very large cut in pay when I got this other job. And I was having that conversation with God. What are you doing? I'm doing so good. I'm paying my bills off. You want me to be debt free, just that conversation and not understanding how we were going to continue in that fashion. And so, I don't know, it was a week or so after that, Al got a nice raise, which definitely made up for the difference. We also just, my dad passed away, and we just sold his house, which is giving us the opportunity. I can pay all his debt off and then just about all of ours. So,
Wow.
yeah.
Yeah, his plan is often different than the way we would plan it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's so good when you get to that place. And it's interesting because people think that finances is just something that the church talks about, because we need the finances or whatever. But the reality is, we see through scripture where it's, that's where our heart is, where your treasure is, that's where your heart is. And so for you to be even in that place where you're like, yeah, we started with 2% or 3% or whatever, but now to be in that place where now not only are you being faithful in it, but you're being excited about being faithful in it. Because now that's a heart change, right? That's not just the checks that we're writing
It's
change.
not obligation.
It's something that's changed in your heart.
Yeah.
And then that spills over into lots of areas of your life, not just your finances, but just even that, being able to walk through something hard, and it's okay to still go, God, what's going on? Why is this happening? Yeah. But to still know, but I do trust him. I'm showing him that I trust him every week when I put that check in, or however you do it, that I trust. And so
we see that response from Jesus too, in the Garden of Gethsemane. I mean, I think the if there's any other way, basically,
right?
There's got to be another way, and then sometimes that gets translated a little bit more neater than I think it actually was, because I know that I'm not, as holy as Jesus was, he was still a man, and so I imagine that same, response of any other way, there's got to be. And I know we all find ourselves in that situation where God, I don't understand what you're leading me into.
Right.
But there is that special, he's just so good in the way that he responds to obedience. Ultimately, is he's just hang in there with me and watch what I can pull you through, and watch what I can bring you into.
That's good. So with that, I mean, I guess going back to the original conversation about you guys, I think that's super cool that your husband had already had this draw on his life towards, young men, helping them, mentoring them, and all of that.
Yeah.
And that being even just a thing that helped tip the scales for him to go, actually, I do need to start figuring this thing out. And I know him and I have had a few conversations about what that looks like, but I think it's really cool because as we were doing this, we're hearing different stories, some of which were like immediate. You saw the immediate need met. You saw, people's lives impacted, some of which we won't know until one day, right? And then some of these where, how cool will that be, 5 years from now to be like, hey, I knew that was in my heart, but that little nudge is what pushed me into like checking on what it would look like to actually start this ministry. I think that's awesome.
He'd been sitting on it for a while and hadn't even shared it with me.
Wow.
Until a couple years later, and just kind of dreaming and what would that look like, and fretting a lot on his end. What am I doing? How am I going to do this, God? Trying to do it in his own strength in a sense. And then when you gave the opportunity with the money, he's like, okay, I guess this is what I have to do.
That's amazing. That's so cool. Well, it's interesting because for me, I knew you guys. You've been coming. How long have you been coming to River?
7, 8 years.
Yeah, it's been a long time.
Yeah.
But even that, I didn't know that in the middle of that so much has changed even in your faith journey. Like that you came and you weren't in a place where you were, trusting that God would meet you with your finances and all that. And I know there's other parts, like even this last weekend, you shared with me some of the cool stuff that's going on right now. We've been praying for one of your kids.
We have prayed for my daughter for years and years. And I didn't see any change. And but I have heard so many people say, don't quit praying. And so I did. Frustrated prayers many times, but just praying. And my son-in-law's cousin has a daughter. She's 7 years old, and she's like, Mom, I want to go to church. And so they decided they were going to go to church, and my daughter's like, okay, I'll go to church with you. And so that seed has been planted and growing for a while, and it's amazing. I cry tears of joy just knowing that.
So there's a lot of people that I know that they've got prodigals. So speak to them. What would you say to them?
Don't quit praying. Don't quit praying, and walk the walk and talk the talk, and love them. Love them where they're at. It's hard when you see them doing things and behaving in ways that you that isn't how you raise them, but they have a will of their own, and God is the only one that can do the transformation.
Yeah, that's amazing. I was so excited when you told me that last weekend to hear that, because I know that's I can only imagine for a parent how hard that is to you want to get in there and control what they're doing, and it doesn't work that way.
I'm a recovering control freak.
How's that going? If we asked Al, how would he say it's going?
I've got stories about that too. The one point where I totally said, okay, I'm done. And every once in a while he has to remind me about that time in our life. It seems like trauma just seems to abound. That is the way God has to get my attention for some reason. I don't know.
I think that I've been thinking a lot lately. I think I've said it like during worship a couple times in recent weeks, of this idea of worshiping God with open hands. And just I feel like a couple weeks ago we were in worship, and I just had the kind of that picture in my head of worshiping God, but just holding on to stuff. And I think we do that, as we're talking about, praying for our kids. We kind of grip onto that situation, and we have a hard time giving that to God. And we do with our finances too. And there's that. Well, kind of in all the things that you're talking about, I just see God moving in a very specific way, not just in your life, but I think it's in all of our lives, of trying to get us to just like open up our hands and say like, hey, he's the God who gives, he's the God who takes away. It all comes from him. And to just be open to like, all right, God, these are your kids, these are your finances, do what you want to do. And And I think when our heart gets to that place, God is like, oh, that's like fertile soil now that I can really do something with that. And so I just love to see that in your life.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Just one other thing, the Bible study that I'm facilitating for the women, we're doing Experiencing God by, is it Blackaby? And one theme throughout the Bible study so far is God is at work everywhere. People ask and pray, Lord, what is your will for my life? Like seeking, but they're asking the wrong questions. Instead, God, I know you're at work everywhere. What is it that you have for me right where I'm at?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good. You want to give a little plug for your Thursday night group?
Oh, I guess I just did, huh?
Yeah.
I did not mean to do that.
No, that's good. That's really good.
Yeah.
So that's just, you have a women's group that's Thursday night here
Every
at the church.
Thursday, 6 to 7:30.
And you're in the auditorium?
We are right here,
In the
yes.
auditorium. Okay, great. So going back to when you guys started coming to River, what drew you to River?
I had been at a church since 2000, and whatever 2025 minus 8, that's when we left. We were very involved as a church. We were deacons. I served in the kids' church. We were very involved, and the church had some stuff going on that just wasn't healthy. And we had talked about it, about maybe finding another church, but I mean, that's like leaving a family member. I mean, we had an amazing small group, and a leader of our small group was just phenomenal. Love him and his wife are an integral part of why Al and I are still together. They just loved God, and they stepped in and helped us in so many ways. But the church, there were some things that weren't healthy, and we had talked about a number of times, but we just couldn't bring ourselves to go church shopping, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, there was legitimate reasons why we felt we needed to leave the church, but it was hard, and we just couldn't find ourselves to do it. Well, my dearest friends, Alan and Melinda, had gone to in California, the
Dream Center.
Dream Center.
Yep.
And you guys asked Melinda to get up on stage, and that made her very uncomfortable. And Al was out of town, and so I was like, well, maybe I'll come see your church and support you from the congregation. And so I came here, and Al got home, and I said, I found our new church. That's all it took.
It's tough. I mean, it's always tough to hear that, because obviously churches go through hard times and stuff. I love the fact that you took that serious, though. Like leaving a church is not. So many people don't treat that as a serious thing. They just kind of hop, and that's heartbreaking, because I think it gets to where it becomes easier and easier to just leave a church.
Well, it's like a marriage. You can't, when you have an issue with your spouse, you got to sit down and talk about it and hash that out, whatever that looks like. And that's what we tried to do with the church. But it just, it was time, and God brought us here.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's very cool.
Well, we're happy to have you here.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. So anyhow, well, that's it's been really interesting to get to hear some of those stories, and I think it's good for people to hear even just that journey for you guys of figuring out what that is. Because a lot of times I think people think that everybody that goes to church has figured out the even the giving thing, the generosity thing, and but yet I think there's a lot more people that sit in the seats that struggle with it. And do you have anything that you'd say to them if there's people that are just like, yeah, I don't know about that. I like all the other stuff they talk about, but when they ask for money, I'm not a big fan.
Well, I don't view it as giving money to the church. I view it as giving it to God so that for his kingdom.
Love that.
And how more awesome is that than to be a part of watching people come to know Christ? And collectively, as people tithe, you have more ability to reach more people. Yeah.
What about to someone who finds themselves in the position that you described for your of like where you were when you first started to give? where it's like, God, I'm looking at my finances and I don't see how there's a way.
Yeah.
What about to that person who's hesitant to give because they're afraid that if they give, that God won't, either He won't, or that they're going to end up lacking in that? What would you say to that person?
Well, I know there's people out there, you don't live, lavish lives. You don't go out and buy coffees every morning, and you don't go to the movies, and because you don't have the money. I get it. We were there, and we had 5 kids that we were trying to put food in their mouths. So I get not having the extra money, and kind of robbing Peter to pay Paul in a sense. You pay less on this bill to pay this bill that you'd been neglecting for a while. I get it. We were there, and we're certainly not, we're not completely debt free, but we're far from where we were at, and it's just starting small. And like you were talking about God's math, it doesn't make sense. Because we didn't get this huge pay increase. We started with what we had, and we started small, and then God was faithful, and we got a better job, and we got a pay increase, and we were renting, and we didn't have good credit. We had horrible credit. I don't know how it happened, but God brought us to the house that we're in now, and we were able to purchase it, and it was all because we started small, and it grows. I don't know how God does it. I don't understand.
Yeah.
But small steps. That's all it takes.
Well, man, we really appreciate you coming out and spending some time with us and just sharing your story. It's exciting. We're excited to see what happens with the ministry that God's laid on Al's heart, and where that goes, and really excited to see that just that little seed could be instrumental in helping get that thing rolling too. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And I know for some people it was really, the generosity part is obviously this season we're kind of talking a little bit about that, sowing the seed, but I know for some people that are going to listen to this, maybe the most important thing that you shared was even more the prodigal coming home, because I know there's a lot of families that are in a place where they're maybe at that place where they almost feel like, yeah, that's cool, but that's never going to happen. And I just say never say never,
felt that
because
way. I honestly did. I was like, she is who she is, and she's a lost cause. And, I know in my heart of hearts that Jesus is coming, and He's coming back very soon. And so it was hurtful, because I'm like, she's running out of time to be able to have that opportunity to enter in that personal relationship. So, yeah.
That's awesome. Really cool. Thank you for sharing that with us. Love that. And tell Al that he should have been sitting here with us talking about his ministry, but I know he's hunting.
Yeah.
If you'd like to give that mentorship thing a test and take me hunting, I'd be willing to, because he seems to get way more elk than I do. So,
well, it's been a while since we've had elk, and I'm needing some elk. So.
Well, thanks again, Danette. We appreciate you being here, and just excited to see what God is doing. And thank you all for joining us as well. As we continue in this series, you're going to hear more and more stories about what people did with the seed that they were given to plant, but also just generosity in general and what that looks like. So thanks, and we hope to see you again next week.